Take a look at Joel Embiid and try to assess whether you think he's going to play tonight against the San Antonio Spurs. He's been great when he's been out there. 20 or more points in 16 straight games.
He's spectacular against the Rockets the other day.
20 times, 30 and 10 this season for Embiid.
So,
Ben Simmons is going to play
saying
tonight.
He's pretty good.
I'm saying he's really good. He's just unsure tonight about his availability. Simmons will play. He's dealing with an illness, but he's going to go. And Jimmy Butler will sit out again because of that sore wrist. They take on the San Antonio Spurs, who come in having lost 3 of their last 5. They blew out the Sixers in their first meeting back in San Antonio. What a little more than halfway through the season, what have you seen about the Sixers that you like? What questions would you still like answered?
Well, I mean, look, I think there's still a team that's doesn't shoot it as well from the perimeter as you'd like if you're talking about them being a contender. But Joel Embiid is so good. He was so good against Houston the other day. If you could take a player and ride him in his game through the playoffs, they've got one of the handful of guys to me in the league that if Embiid gets in that bag and really starts playing at a high level in the postseason, I don't know how you'd stop him. I don't know what another team would do to take him away completely to prevent him from being effective.
No doubt about it, other than go look at the blueprint that the Boston Celtics put forth last year. Like, what gets lost in all of this sometimes is because these young, incredibly talented players show us their ceiling, we forget how important experience is in the postseason.
Sure.
And when you play in a regular season, I don't game plan. We just kind of talk about what we want to try and do against you, but we don't drill it. We don't have tendencies. We don't have a book on you, and we're not on the same schedule. When you get in the postseason now, I get an opportunity. I remember playing for Pat Riley my rookie year. After the season, we're getting ready for the playoffs, and the assistant coach brought me a book. And I was like, damn, I didn't know what it was a book of every player, every play they ran that season, every play. So everything they had ever done on that court. So you knew every tendency.
Right.
You knew what they'd go to when things got tight. You knew the plays they were going to run. And so that's why I always say in the postseason, that's why you need great players in the postseason, because great players can score against great defense consistently. And great talents can score, but they need the experience. Now, last year will help him and Ben Simmons because, it showed them as much as we thought and were ready to anoint, they weren't quite ready.
No, end of the game execution was terrible.
It was not very good.
And also couldn't get loose the way they needed.
And the pressure of the moment.
That's when they had more shooters.
Yeah, and it was also the pressure of the moment. Because what happens is they'd never been in those situations before, ever.
Right.
They'd never, in their careers, they'd never been in situations where they felt a little unsure, where they weren't, comfortable with who they were as a player at that level, because they'd never had anybody be able to make them do things they didn't want to do. And so that's why that postseason, that experience will help them. But their growth, I think, is coming. The question for me, big picture, is, okay, is the depth going to be there? Because as good as those guys are, you're still going to have guys coming off your bench that can give you quality minutes, that can make big plays. And that's where those veteran guys. Last year, to Seku's point, they had a better overall roster, even though this one has more top-level talent than they did. To have the Bellinellis and guys like that, and
Ilyasova, and who they got for nothing.
Yeah, those veteran guys that you can trust in big moments to make plays. Not having those guys is a concern.
They'll see Bellinelli tonight for San Antonio. By the way, Joel Embiid will play, we are now told.
Oh, good.
For the 76ers.
I got my league pass already set up.
Because the end of the game execution was a serious issue for them against the Celtics. How much of a difference will Butler make in that he's likely to have the ball in his hands a lot in those late game situations?
It will make it. And listen, in all fairness, Brett Brown's got to take some responsibility too. I remember you and I were working during the regular season last year, and we had a couple times in the game situations where I didn't know what the hell they had tried to draw up and run. It was so, as much as we want to put it on the players, Brett Brown and his staff have to take some responsibility. I don't think they handle in the games. That Celtic game where his team was imploding in the second quarter last year in the postseason, in the game they were up big, he didn't call a timeout. He just basically let it go, and they ended up losing that game in the second quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And again, he's got to be able to help that young group with his ability to give them stuff that they feel confident in when they have to go out and execute.
Let me interrupt for just a second because Victor Oladipo apparently has said, there are only 15 teams in each conference, right?
Yeah. I thought that was rhetorical.
Check
My
the
bad.
standings. That's really for everybody. The Grizzlies are 14 in the Western Conference. That's not great. At 19-28, so they're getting a head start on the trade season. Reports confirmed today, in fact, that both Mike Conley and Marc Gasol are now available for trade. Here's their reaction this morning at shoot-around.
It's where we're at, I guess. It's part of the business. It's not like we've been traded yet or anything like that. It's part of it, and we knew with the way things have been going the last few weeks that anything can happen.
That's not going to change, is it? That's not going to change to me. So, my relationship with the Grizzlies might change, but my relationship with Memphis won't.
Now for more, let's bring in David Cobb, who covers the Grizzlies for the Memphis Commercial Appeal. And David, this story isn't the only thing heating up there. Apparently there was a fire in the team locker room this afternoon. What happened?
Yeah, you put Marc Gasol and Mike Conley on the trading block, and the locker room literally catches on fire today. A light dropped in the sauna and sent smoke throughout the building, and everybody had to evacuate just 3 hours before tip-off. So the Grizzlies tonight are operating out of the Memphis Tigers locker room here at the FedEx Forum.
Wow, rich people problems. The light falls into the sauna, right?
Exactly.
Well, for a lot of us, the writing has been on the wall in Memphis in terms of their future and perhaps unloading the Stars, seeing what they could get. What was the tipping point for Robert Pera and management now?
Well, it was the Monday loss to the Pelicans. They lost by 20 at home to a Pelicans team that was playing without Anthony Davis. And this loss came on the Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration game, which is a big, big day for the city every year, in front of a packed house. And it was, I think, the death knell, so to speak, in terms of any hope that this Conley-Gasol reiteration was going to take this team anywhere this year.
Well, both players carry huge price tags. Gasol has another year at $25 million plus. He could also opt out. Assuming he reaches a games played incentive, which seems likely, Mike Conley has 2 years and $67 million left after this season. How do those deals complicate the trades that could be out there for the Grizzlies?
Well, I think it minimizes what the Grizzlies can expect to get in return for either of them. If you flash back a decade ago, they traded Pau Gasol and they got 2 first-round picks and Marc Gasol back from the Lakers in the deal. Well, Pau Gasol was 27 in the prime of his career at the time. Both of these guys are past 30. They're past their primes, and they've got these huge contracts. And so I think that really kind of minimizes what the Grizzlies are going to be able to get for them. And they've got to be realistic as they listen to these offers, because if they've got, these grand visions of getting back a star player or a bevy of first-round picks, I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, those aren't the only 2 huge contracts on the roster either. Reportedly, the Grizzlies are also trying to find a new home for Chandler Parsons, who also makes a ton of money, hasn't played since October. Will a team looking to trade for either Conley or Gasol have to take on Parsons' contract as well?
How could they? I mean, what team has that amount of cap space? Unless they've just got a ton of dead money that they can send back that the Grizzlies are willing to take, then I don't see how that would work. But I guess it's not impossible, but it would take a real talented mathematician to figure that one out.
There are a few of those giant contracts in the summer of 2016 that teams are looking to move at this time here in 2019. We'll find out soon enough. Appreciate the time, David. Good to talk to you, and enjoy the game tonight. David Cobb from the Memphis Commercial Appeal. All right, guys, when you look ahead to these two, obviously both talented players. Gasol's a 3-time All-Star, former Defensive Player of the Year. Conley, much discussed, one of the best players, if not the best in the league, who has not made an All-Star team yet, but they've got these big numbers following them wherever they go. What kind of market do you think there is for either?
I think it's robust for both of them in theory.
In theory, yeah.
But it becomes a much more difficult prospect when you look at the numbers, specifically on Conley's deal. And then for Gasol, I know it makes sense that you'd want a big man with his resume, but does he fit in a lot of these places is the question. They've been married to a certain style, GA, that whole grit and grind ideal that they've played in basically, certainly for Conley's entire career in Memphis. It's the only place he's ever played. I don't think he's known. Marc Gasol, likewise, has been ingrained in this thing. I mean, this is the way they've come up playing in this league. You're asking them both to step out of a comfort zone that's been really good to them and for years really good to Memphis. Now you're talking about, can you just take these guys as individual talents and plug them in anywhere? I'm not sure, Matt, it's as simple as that.
It's absolutely not simple. The one advantage you do have, both guys have the necessary skill set to play the game today. Both can shoot it, both can pass it, both can defend it. I would say both have high basketball IQs. So then it becomes a matter of, does the contract make sense? You know, when you look at Gasol's number, you say, well, it's a big number, but he doesn't have 4 more years on it.
Right.
And there's a scenario, I would think, where he might be willing to go somewhere and not opt in the last year and sign an extension.
Like his brother did in
like
San
his
Antonio.
brother did.
Yeah.
And if he's got a chance to maybe go somewhere where he can be a significant difference maker. Because as good as both those guys are, the problem for Memphis is their 2 best players aren't good enough to be the best players on a really good team.
Right.
But if they're your 3rd best player or 4th best player, you're a really, really good basketball team. And so then you got to juxtapose that against the salary. And oftentimes with some of the younger teams that are making a push for the postseason, you can take that salary on because you haven't paid your young stars completely. So
Brooklyn, for instance.
Yeah, Brooklyn makes a lot of sense for me when you start looking at them. And also I would think Memphis, because Brooklyn is going to have first-round picks that could potentially be lottery picks, which is obviously something. That's not the ideal scenario if you're Memphis. But keep in mind, Memphis is not a team that's going to be able to participate in an A-list free agent market. You know, they can sign free agents, but they're not getting the superstars.
Right.
So for them, those draft picks become vitally important because you do want to be able to develop within, much like they did with Jaren Jackson Jr., who could potentially end up being one of those guys at the forefront, like the guys they have on their roster, in essence, who they were able to draft.
So quickly, we're up against time here. What's a realistic haul coming back to the Grizzlies? Or is it just a matter of do whatever you can to get out from under these deals and reset?
No, I think they want young talent.
I mean, I know they want
first-round picks. I think and I do think there's enough value because of the talent of those 2 players that they could get what they want back. It's just a matter if it pans out long-term, if they're able to rebuild. Do they trust that front office? Because they probably should have done this about a year and a half.
Much sooner than this. And do you get one of them moved and not the other? That's that's going to be the difficult part.
Right.
When's the last time a team was able to move 2 veteran contracts like this at the same deadline?
Agree with Parsons.
And then if you think Parsons is going to be a part of that as well, that's a whole lot of moving to do between now and the trade.
I don't see a scenario.
3 guys who make $25 million and up.
Yeah, I don't see a scenario where you're going to move all 3.
Yeah.
No, it seems unlikely. That would be the dream right now.
That'd be the executive of the year.
Yes. All right, much more to get to on the way. We'll revisit the night Klay Thompson got hot, even by Klay Thompson standards, and that's saying something. All right, vote on @NBA TV until noon on Friday. No, not yet. Give me a chance. I'm here doing the segment now. When do you want me to vote?
My bad.
I don't have a device on me. Give me a chance.
You don't have your phone. I'm sorry.
No. After the segment, I'll go and vote. Who you got?
This is difficult because I think you run into the argument of what defines athleticism. Is it explosive, get off the floor, ability?
We're here to overthink this.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so we're going to take this to the deep end of the pool here.
Right.
But I got to be honest with you. As explosive as Russ is and as marvelous as LeBron's athleticism has been for so long, Giannis is the largest guy in this category in terms of a graceful athlete.
Freakish, you might say.
To me, well, he's been called something like that. But to me, a lot of it is about how efficient are you with the ball underneath you and with the game underneath you in terms of can you get up and down the floor at your size and dominate in all the different ways that he has shown us he can this year? When you're that height, when you're 7 feet tall basically, and 14 feet long from fingertip to fingertip or whatever, that to me connotates a certain type of athleticism that the average man can't muster.
Sure.
Russ, to me, is the most explosive by position in the entire league. You talk about a guy, a furious athleticism that can overwhelm people. LeBron is probably the most well-rounded, but the best and the one with the highest ceiling in this category to me is Giannis.
I'm going to go with the old head, in LeBron. And part of it is most athletic. I've never seen a guy in his 16th season this athletic that can still do the things that he does. And part of being a great athlete is your ability to utilize that athletic ability with your mind. And I don't know that we've ever seen as good a combination of athletic prowess and intellectual understanding and capacity of how to play the game as LeBron. So I would go with him in that category for that. Now, Giannis is freakish, as is Westbrook. But I just think, too, being a great athlete, we're in the business of winning. He's won the most.
That's absolutely true.
I think that does, because you can have all that ability in the world, but if you're not getting to a level where that athletic ability says you should get to, then that, to me, gets discounted a little bit.
Well, to me, that gets into a different category of just great overall players, not just athlete, which is the question.
Well, these are three
on the
athletes.
table.
These three
are
athletes.
three great athletes. To me, of the three at this moment in time, I'm going with Russell Westbrook, who is as freakish as anybody in the league.
Yes,
and when
he
you
is.
think of explosion, and that's often what people kind of default to when they think of athleticism, there's just nobody as explosive. That dunk last night at the end of the game against Portland, that was absurd. And you saw people getting out of the way. This guy could have been an NFL safety. He could have been who knows what else.
Maybe a defensive end. He ain't
Pro
small.
sports, I mean, strong safety.
But to me, that's always been the dilemma about athleticism. Is it,
Right, what is that?
Yeah, what does it entail? Like, is the guy who would be the most versatile of these guys? Because I think LeBron clearly could have been a professional in several different
Oh,
disciplines,
sure, lots of
and
things, yeah.
So you think about that, but man, could you imagine Giannis or Russell Westbrook playing volleyball? You know, like, or playing another sport where they could use
I can't
their
go
specific
volleyball. There
talents.
ain't that much money in it. I don't think they would have went
But they
that
could have
route.
dominated.
I don't mean just how much money you get. I mean,
I'm just teasing.
But I mean, you think about that, the versatility of your athleticism, and then instinctual athleticism. Like LeBron, to me, is off the charts when it comes to athletic instincts. I don't remember a guy, maybe since Michael Jordan, being that instinctual with his athleticism in terms of timing and knowing how to, make plays on both ends of the floor, all over the court, the way LeBron does.
And if you want to include longevity, reliability, he goes into that. I know he's hurt right now, but he goes into that category as well. That's always been one of my arguments for Kareem as the greatest of all time.
Yep.
Guy played into his 40s. He was unbelievable all that time.
There's no question.
And
All
started.
right, vote on NBA TV. Yeah, Isaiah and the old school guys will tell you they had him at the top of the scouting report deep into his 30s.
Yeah.
Crunch time coming up at 9 Eastern time. All the big finishes from a big Wednesday night.